The annual police crime report of 2023 put 15,000 as the number of cases reported of domestic violence. 10,000 of these were women. The 2022 UWONET report put intimate partner violence, a usual precursor for femicide, at 45%. Very disheartening statistics. 249 persons was the number of individuals that lost their lives to aggravated domestic violence, 113 of whom were women. All this in 2023. These are nothing if not glaring statistics and indicator of a harsh and devastating reality that especially women find themselves in. 2 weeks ago, on 4th September 2024, Rebecca Cheptegei, a celebrated Olympian, a Ugandan woman, a mother, lost her life after she was doused in petrol by her boyfriend and set ablaze. She suffered in agony and eventually lost her life. The the Domestic Violence Act Coalition last week on Friday met and elaborated on a number of demands, including increased funding, community-based initiatives, and accountability from all actors that are responsible for ending, especially domestic violence against women. Today, the question we have at hand is the cost of violence against women. This has been a very devastating week, especially for the women of Uganda, a very devastating period, coming to terms with the fact that despite the fact that the women's rights movement is nearly 100 years old, we are still regressing. We are still at a standstill. Women are still more than ever being targeted on the basis of being women. With me, I have a very illustrious panel to elaborate on this very pressing issue. I will start from my extreme left. Aloyo Omega, a feminist lawyer with FIDA Uganda and the communications officer at FIDA Uganda. Thank you, Omega.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Next to her, we have Joan Akakikunda, a women's rights activist, a lawyer, and a lawyer with Women and Girls Child Development Association. Welcome, Joan. And say hello to the audience. Thank you. And then right next to me, I have Susan Achen, the program's coordinator, Women's Rights and Access to Justice at Uganda Women's Network, and more importantly, a women's rights defender and a lawyer. Thank you for joining us, Susan.
Thank you for the invitation.
Okay, this is, of course, a very saddening issue. It is, of course, heartfelt, and so we'll just be delving right into it. Omega, I'll start with you.
Okay.
You know, over the last few weeks, we've seen a number of stories come out, not just in Uganda but in the region, but globally, about violence against women in particular. We've had the incident of Rebecca Cheptegei, of course. We've had a young girl come out, a 16-year-old, say that she was raped in police custody, very disheartening. And then in Ethiopia, we had a girl, 7 years old, who was raped by a gentleman. Oh, I can't even say a gentleman, please excuse me. And she will come out with stuffed with semen. All this across the globe. In France, we had a lady whose husband instituted a series of over 80 rape situations against her. She was drugged by her husband and continuously over the course of 10 years raped. So my question to you is, why are we seeing so many incidents come out? Is it just that now we have more access to media, or is there an underlying factor? Are we regressing as the women's rights movement? Have we seen a further, backtrack from where we were as the women's rights movement, or is it just that we have more access to information as we are now?
The access to information is a good thing, because for me it shows that you actually now have the stories on ground. Usually as people in CSO world, ONG world, people come out and say, what, violence against women is something that is actually happening. It is on ground. So it is in a sad way, it is sad that these stories are coming out, but then it is good because it is showing the true state of affairs. Gender inequality is still a thing. Violence against women is still a thing. So if you add to the statistics that you've said, my most shocking statistic is that 1 in 3 girls report that they are losing their virginity was a rape. So you see that statistic 1, 2, 3. One of us was raped. That's how we lost our virginity. So these issues that are in the country, they are real. Gender inequality is real. Violence against women is real. Gender norms are real, right? So these topics that civil society organizations come on shows and speak about things like the gender norms of saying that men say have the authority to beat women. There are actually things that are happening in society. These trends are a reflection of the true state of societies. A society is patriarchal in nature. A society is, do they value women? You know, I hear in some cultures people say that if you beat a woman, you love her.
Yeah.
So what you see on the news is always a reflection of the times. Another story that maybe you could have left out is the lady that was beaten to death and then her husband pureed her in a blender.
Yeah.
So for a person to believe that they have the authority over a person, another individual, to the point of killing them, not only just to kill them in a humane manner, but in such a gruesome manner, to think that someone can actually be blended into some sort of smoothie, a human being, it goes to show you a reflection. It goes to show you that it is not only African societies that are facing these challenges, even European societies. But for me, the death of Rebecca Cheptegei just spoke one thing to me. Today when I was reading the Daily Monitor, Cheptegei, his fellow male athlete, was calling for athletes to come back from Kenya to Uganda because they're training in Kenya. So for me, I was saying, why are these people training in Kenya? Are you seeing already challenges that we are having, that our athletes are going to a different country to train from there? But that is also not a problem, right? They could be training there and they could be safe. So usually I'm very tough on politicians because I think they politicize a lot of things, but this is one of those things that I think need to be politicized. Rebecca Cheptegei's death is not an isolated event. It is the culmination of bad governance, in my opinion. Your athletes are going to a different country, you're not monitoring them, you're not making sure that there are structures in place to make sure that they're safe. And then also there are other layers that you have to look at. Violence against women in sports-dominated fields. Already we say that gender norms exist, right? So if sports has always been viewed as something that is male-related, even at global stages like the FIFA, right? The way that you know popular world football, it is male teams that are at the forefront, but there are female teams, right? So if sports is a male-dominated field, how are the female athletes within that male-dominated field safe? You remember the story of the football manager or something that kissed a referee.
Yeah.
You saw that story.
Yes, I did.
For someone to believe that they actually can go to another person that is a professional doing their job and give you a kiss. So the media and these stories are simply a reflection of the times. We should be sad that we are seeing this. We're seeing grandfathers raping young children, their grandchildren. It is saddening, but then at the same time, it should be more fuel for people to work with. I met someone from a development agency, and we were speaking to them and asking them about funding, and they said, this funding that you look for so much, it is a responsibility of the government. And for me, when we were preparing for this show, that is the thing that hit me the most. I said we could come here and we could talk about all the statistics and against violence against women and girls, but this is a responsibility of the government, caring for its people, saying that these are the trends that we are seeing. Ordinarily, the head of state should have come out and declared a day of national mourning. This is an athlete that has gone up to Olympic level, right? You should have come out. Did we get a statement?
No, we didn't. Do you believe that the backlash the women's rights movement has been facing of late has manifested further into this, this expanded reach of violence against women?
When you say the backlash the women's rights movement has been facing, it's also again a manifestation of a problem, because it shows that if there is a group of women that are coming out to advance gender equality, to say that men and women are equal in Ugandan societies, right? Then why should that group face what? Backlash. Unless patriarchy is so entrenched, and again it goes back to state responsibility over women and girls. We make up almost half or even more than half of this population. So why is it that we are seeing government in power, the way that it is in power, and not caring about this half. We need statements from leaders in power. I'm not saying that civil society has no place. I'm a member of civil society. Each and every day we are working to solve this problem, but we cannot make the responsibility of the state the responsibility of civil society. And it's something that I always keep hearing. Okay, no. It's almost become as though women's rights issues are NGO issues. They're not NGO issues. Women are equal citizens in this country. And I know this is a really harsh position coming from a person in the civil society world. I recognize the role that we do, but I am also saying that the state has to have a piqued interest in this, to study, okay, why is this happening against these people? How do we help them? What is that? So even that backlash itself is representative of the problem.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Omega. Susan, I'll come to you. In regards to violence against women, of course, women are the victims, but my question would be, are there certain systems, institutions, or individuals that benefit particularly from the continued violence against women? Obviously, you'd say in a patriarchal society, the men benefit from this, but this is still a systematic issue as well. If violence against women continues to be perpetuated, are there a certain group of people that benefit from this standard existing?
I don't know that anyone consciously feels like they benefit, but I think it is a level of indifference, you know. I think it's a level of indifference towards the abuse, the violation, the continued relegation of women to the bottom tier, women and girls. I think the benefit, if I could use the term benefit, would be in them not having, in anyone, institutions, government institutions, authorities that have not only the mandate but the resources, the machinery to provide protection for women's rights. It's just another block off the table. It's just something else that they do not have to pay attention to. So they will concentrate their efforts elsewhere, and they are comfortable that they don't have to focus on this. Like Omega has said, there's this perception that women's rights issues are one for women and for those in civil society and anybody else. Maybe those in private sector that are putting money into empowering women in different ways. So those that are mandated just don't have, they benefit because they just don't have to pay attention to it, which is really pathetic. Yeah, it's just pathetic.
Okay, so we're always pushing for the shift in narratives from, let's say, women are seen as disposable, women are seen are objectified, women are seen as just placeholders, if even, and yet for the last for the entirety of human existence, women have continued to hold that place. Why is it that we have been so reluctant to shift, especially now? But beyond that, why is it that I understand that there are men and the patriarchy and everything, but why is it especially women have found it difficult to shift from the dynamic of being objectified? Because I think this is a conversation we must have, especially when we're talking about domestic violence. We have even in regards to FGM, in societies like that, it's the women that are holding down the girls, it's the women that are cutting the girls. So why is it women have found it hard to shift, especially from a dynamic where they're objectified, they're viewed as just, instruments for a man's pleasure?
That's what the patriarchy does. Patriarchy gets women to move against fellow women. When you hear this, there's this acronym PhD, which is commonly used to mean pull her down. It is because sometimes there is a discomfort about this woman who is standing tall and proud and bold and making changes, and other women are going to listen to all the dissent coming from non-female spaces and start to pull her down. The patriarchy demands that, to use your example, that a teenage girl must undergo mutilation to render her fit for marriage. Who benefits from that? but the patriarchy uses women to do its bidding, and that is all again couched in our socialization. Yeah, it's couched in our socialization, and I think we are our own biggest enemies. For as long as we do not start to recognize oppression for what it is, for as long as we continue to embrace and entrench certain acts, certain actions, certain beliefs, certain norms, all in the name of culture, all in the name of faith, religion, all in the name of morality. That, and you know, there's a lot of hypocrisy, by the way, around these things. That is not to say that I am opposed to faith and to culture, because for sure there is a whole plethora of positive culture, positive norms in faith and in culture and in tradition. It is there. But for as long as we continue to bury our heads in the sand that it is beneficial to girls and women to keep them out of the limelight, to hold them down, then we as women are not going to make that change. I was having a discussion with a group of friends on one of my girl groups, and there are women who do not share this cause. You know, it's disgusting actually. I keep telling my friends that, you know what, until the 60s, many women were not allowed to vote. Many women could not hold jobs without their husbands' permission. I was reading last week, there was a thread on X. It was a Kenyan thread, and they're speaking about how women in the workforce as recently as 1980 could not take pension. If you took gratuity, then you could not take pension, because the assumption is that you are married somewhere and someone is going to take care of you. What is that? So as long as women don't take these conversations that we are having seriously, and it's terrible. Most women, especially those of us who have gone to school and consider ourselves learned, and we are living in this bubble of privilege, you know, because you do not get to interact on a daily basis with suffering, you know, with difficulty. For us, it's not our problem, you know, we are zoned out. And as long as we continue to live in that bubble, we are not making any shifts. We are not making any shifts. I've had women say, again, on some of my groups, girls who get pregnant, what were they doing? Omega has just told us that out of 3 defiled,
One out of three
girls has lost her virginity due to a sexual offense. But I've had conversations where women are saying, no, what were those girls doing? We always think that the survivor is morally inept, you know? And morality, I think we need to rethink who sets the standard for morality, because it's getting us to this point today. It's getting us to this point today, where women are being violated, they are losing their lives because maybe she deserved it, you know?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Susan. Joan, I bring you into the conversation. Susan has really brought up a fundamental point, I think. The aspect of morality, the aspect of who sets the tone, who sets the standard for these dynamics that exist in society. So I want to bring in to the conversation on the basis of religious and cultural institutions in particular. Do you believe, you know, these are institutions we ideally assume would be there to protect us. They would be there to uphold, let's say, the basic standard of humanity should exist in these institutions. Do you believe that in a way they have been complicit in what we are seeing today, in the, you know, the completely horrid state of affairs that we have today?
Thank you.
Oh, and if so, how exactly do we shift this?
I think I'll start with how do we shift this. How to shift this is that we're going to continue having these conversations. We are going to have mindset change. we're going to have awareness in the communities, and we're going to start with our religious leaders, we're going to start with our cultural leaders, because they're somehow responsible. When it comes to morality, when we relate morality with religion, religion is also full of patriarchy. Because, I mean, when you relate the two, if I can give you an example, if we all recall during COVID, a whole bishop, and mind you, a bishop, reverends look up to him, and then these other subordinates, we the believers, we look up to them. And then they come on national TV and they're like, those girls are sinners. What do you expect for the other people to say? Because we believe in religion. We believe in our leaders. These are the people that preach to us, and what they preach to us is what we take. So they are calling young girls who have been raped, who have been sexually violated, sinners. They are judging them. And what do you expect the rest of the society to do? So I believe that we are going to start with changing their mindset and look into and go back to the norms, that the things that we believe in. How do we see them? We need to go back on the table and reset these things, reset the religious norms and the beliefs that we believe in, because the society is changing. The society is not the society we used to have long time ago. One of these days, things are rapidly changing. The economy is changing. In the ancient, culturally, women were supposed to take care of their homes, and men were supposed to provide. But in the today presently, women are also working because of the economy. We all need to survive. We shall not expect a man to work and you're at home, and then, the expenses are so many. So you are out there also trying to make ends meet. But then, on the other hand, men are not adjusting. At the same time, they are expecting you to do your roles, your gender roles at home, like you were doing in the ancient. So that's why I'm saying we need to revise our cultural norms and our religious beliefs, because the society is changing rapidly. Back then, you are at home, you're expected to be at home and take care of babies and all that, and welcome your husband back home. But now, at the same time, you're expected to work equally like your husband, and then come home and again fulfill your gender roles. So that alone, that is where the problem comes in, and we are no longer agreeing. So we need to go back to the ground table and recheck on how we drafted this thing, because these things were written on paper and they were inserted into our minds to believe. But then, as the society keeps on changing, have we gone back to that table and see how we can adjust all these things all together? So for me, it is a question for all of us, that what is it that we can do? It is our responsibility. For as long as we are still rigid to the norms the beliefs that we have been told, then we are not going to solve anything to do with gender-based violence. Because it is a contradiction between what was written back then and what we were told to believe in and what is happening today.
Okay, but you mentioned a very interesting point about going to converse, to educate the culture and religious leaders. I know for sure CSOs are already doing this, especially women's rights organizations. I'm assuming WEGCDA does the same.
Yes.
Have you seen in your years a shift of any magnitude in the dynamics that they have, in the belief systems that they have? Have you seen that we have reached, that you've made a certain level of progress in regards to a mindset shift with these individuals?
Yes, there is a little bit of progress. However, we need to work together as a globe. We need to work together hand in hand with government. We need to work together with the judicial systems. We need to work together with the communities themselves. Because there is a time I was in a meeting, I'll shift the conversation a little bit, and we were discussing about the marriage and divorce bill. Interestingly, we had the people who make the laws, the people in parliament, and oh my God, the story was quite I don't know which word to use there, but these are the people that we expect to help in drafting and amending the laws and, you know, advocating for all these rights all together. And we were discussing an issue of bride price. Bride price is also an issue that has something very big to do with gender-based violence and all the violence in the homes. And then women who were saying this should be optional because it is one of the reasons as to why there is a rise in violence. Because a man will beat you with the entitlement of you are my property. So I can do anything with you. You cannot do anything without my permission because you belong to me. And then we are like, why isn't it optional? Why don't we try to adjust all these norms of ours? And they were like, no. The women in parliament were like, no, this is our pride. We need those cows to come. Because culturally, I'm like, okay, if we are not going to change mindsets, if we are going to change people's minds, then these are the people we are going to start with. And these are the people we expected to help us. But on the other hand, we realize they're the people to start with. Because they're also saying we are not in agreement with civil society, saying bride price should be optional. We want that sugar. We want that basmati rice in our compounds, in the compounds of our parents. We want those cows to be brought to our village, and then they'll have to say, so-and-so's daughter was given away in pride. And these are the cows that were brought. But on the other, we are not looking at the long-term effects of the fact that me, after this person bringing these cows, then you are his property. You have to answer to him, and everything you do, you are questionable. He is entitled to you. So if we are going to do this, we need to work hand in hand. We need to work together. But as we think that we are helping the women in community and we are supposed to work with government, the government itself also needs help.
So where is the help going to come from?
That's why I'm saying that we need to work together, and we also need the media on the front line.
Thank you very much, Joan. Susan, the question of the media. You know, this is something that we will witness, especially with Rebecca Cheptegei's murder. It was somewhat as if it was brushed aside in favor of more, you know, controversial, quote unquote, engaging topics. You would have people talk about sports, music, but Rebecca's murder was not given the platform. It was not dissected. It was simply reported on and moved aside. Is the media, obviously they've given us platform. We know what's happening in France. We know what's happening in Ethiopia. We know what's happening in Kenya. But is it enough to know? Are they really are they really living up to their fullest potential to exact the change we need to see? Or are they complicit?
The media in Uganda has in the last 2 weeks been extremely disappointing. Extremely disappointing in the manner in which they have handled a death as cruel, as senseless as this one. While international media houses across the globe, by the way, you know, even media houses in China, in the Philippines, in Thailand, were carrying the story, in Uganda, you'd hardly find anything. Apart from the initial reports that, an athlete has been burnt, and then, sadly, she has passed away. Nothing happened. Until now, international media is carrying the story, analyzing it, speaking about the oppression of women, linking it to development. In Uganda, we are quiet. We moved on immediately. What do we see? We are interested in politics. We are interested in Chinatown. We are interested in sports. We are interested in
entertainment, conflict.
In these funny music videos, you know. We moved on. It is not an issue. And yet, what's the role of the media? Educate, shape narratives, convey information, and also convey it in an objective manner. And in our particular case for women's rights and empowerment and gender equality, in a manner that does not compromise the advancement of women's rights. But that's not where we are. Yes. The late Rebecca was buried, I think it was on Saturday. Friday or Saturday. There's nothing in the news about that. But go to international media, you'll find the story there. You know, you'll find the story there. We have moved on. And the media, I think I would like to say that it is complicit. Because when you see the way stories related to women are carried, there's sensationalism. Normally the research is not sufficient to provide an objective account. And then there's little space for media reporting, very little space for media reporting. A lot of it will go to health, a lot of it will go to business. And the stories are not in a manner that normally places women in a favorable position, could I call it that. The media also has a tendency of, in cases of violence, in focusing on the survivor. You will hear and learn so much about the survivor and hardly anything about the perpetrator. So what are we saying about ourselves as a country? Omega says the news is a reflection of ourselves. We are always eager to hide the perpetrator. There is no spotlight on the perpetrator to name and shame, to highlight the fact that what they did is unacceptable, is illegal, and to use them as an example for others not to repeat what they are doing. I don't even know how many of us can know the perpetrator's name in this case. How many of us know Dixon Ndiemi? How many of us can identify him if we saw a picture? And that is common. All these statistics we are seeing, 249 cases of intimate partner violence, 15,000 cases of domestic violence, of which 10,000, that's a whole 71%, by the way, are women. Where are these perpetrators? Where are they? You know? So as a society, we are very, very happy to keep those guys from scrutiny. We are very happy to keep them from scrutiny. And that is where I have a big beef with the media. The media also, again, when I say it doesn't prioritize, it doesn't give stories related to women the fairness in which it should be brought. When you find a case where a man has been violated, or there's a whole victimhood thing that surrounds him, you know, the mourning, the weeping, the grieving, the sympathy is so much more, as if one life is heavier than the other, as if a male's dignity weighs more than a female's dignity. And that is in total disregard of the fact that statistics, if you just go to any sector, the statistics will show that women are holding the shorter end of the stick. If you went into the education sector, if you went to the health sector and just checked the number of cases coming in, either from, especially from cases of violence, if you go to the police, if you went to your LC and asked him, you'll find that women are at the bottom of this line. So what is the media's role? The media in Uganda, it doesn't care. It completely doesn't care. And that is despite a lot of, could I call it, capacity enhancement to understand gender sensitive and women responsive reporting. Many civil society actors have trained actors from different media houses, including working with the guys that make the decisions, the producers, the editors, the people who sign off on which stories should come out. But you'll find resources for, say, investigative journalism or feature stories around women's rights. Those resources are not there. Space for women, even in media houses, to play certain important roles are not there. So the media in Uganda, it leaves a lot to be desired. a lot to be desired.
Thank you so much, Susan. Omega, I'll bring you back into the conversation. The judicial system. Now, fundamentally speaking, the judicial system should be the one that is obviously holding people accountable. We cannot see the change that we want if the judicial system is shaky. And yet, right now we have a backlog of cases. Of these 10,000 cases of domestic violence, the numbers of prosecuted cases are horribly low. And it begs the question, what exactly is wrong with our judicial system? Why is it wrong? Why is that the case? And how do we shift things to make sure that women get the justice that they need? Is it an indicator of, an underlying societal issue? Obviously, it's a governance issue. But then, what, why, and how is the question.
Okay, that's a really good question. But then, as my fellow speakers were speaking, I was just taking a few notes here and there. So, Susan, you said that women are their biggest enemies. I really don't agree with that. That's just something I don't agree with. I don't agree that women are their biggest enemies. And I know that there are reasons why other women may not be able to jump onto this bandwagon in quotes, because that's how they view it. Oh, that bandwagon of women's rights activists. There are reasons that things are like that. So, if you see a group of women coming against women that are fighting for their rights, that is already an odd situation. So why that? Is it that those women are held back by culture? Is it that they're held back by education? If you do a survey of those women, you find that these are women that are not economically empowered. These are women that have never had a day of education. These are women that don't even understand to their core what exactly the women's rights movement is about. So there is a reason. It's if I came and I was giving you food, you would not retaliate against that food unless there was some sort of mindset issue. And again, I said I'm not a political person, but this is something not for the first time, but this is something I feel is extremely political. This mindset change, because that is the issue now. Women not being on board with other women, that is mindset change. Again, it comes back to the state. One time I was making an argument with someone at work, and my argument was, if following the Cheptegei scandal, I said I'm changing. If I'm given 2 polythene bags that are short, I'm taking 1. That is my contribution, and it is very good. And the other person said, you can change all you want, but if the government is not making active steps to make sure that we are living in a safe environment, if the government is not banning polythene bags, or if they are being banned and then later on they can come back, things like that, then your little minute change will contribute something, but it will not contribute to the tune that you were saying, what word did you use? The machinery that the state has to change things. So if the women that are not on board, that is it. It is because of that machinery.
Omega, let me interrupt you for a second, just to
please.
Understand one thing. You say that likely it would be uneducated women obviously from a poor background that are not on board with the women's rights movement. I'd like to ask you about our peers, because I think we're in the same age range.
When I say uneducated, I don't mean education of school. I mean educated, the way the education system, even itself, can advance biases. So you'll find a person that is all the way in parliament, but when it comes to the key things that they need to know, that's why education system itself needs to have provision for legal education. I see changes being made to the curriculum, but I don't see any change on a national human rights course that starts from nursery to the university, breaking it down to those people. Some of the sexual violence that people experience starts in nursery class. But then how do you tailor that information on human rights to say that boys and girls are equal and you're not supposed to touch my private parts to a nursery school child? So that's the education. Of course, it can come off that it is only women that are illiterate, that may not know issues to do with human rights, which is not so. You'll find that it will even be women that are in spaces that are advanced, quote unquote, that could actually be clueless about this. And they're part of the pushback mechanism. Why? Because they're not educated to the tune that they should be educated. They're going through an education system that has not factored in human rights, that has not factored in their rights, that has not factored in why it's important for you to view yourself as an owner of yourself. if that makes sense, to view yourself as an individual first, before you view yourself as a wife, before you view yourself as a daughter, before you view yourself as a daughter of a clan. Who are you? And are you at the same pain or plane as others? So those were just my own thoughts on some women not being part of the women's rights movement. And then my neighbor here had said that men are not adjusting, right? The world is changing, men are not adjusting. And for me, that's just an indication of, as the women's rights movement, how we engage in men, right? I remember the first time I sat in a men engage training, the facilitators told us, oh, in this world, who is in this world? There are men, women, and there are other people, right? We live in a society that is inclusive of all these groups of people. It is, I don't want to say folly, but it is almost folly to think that in a domestic violence case, you're going to focus on the victim or the person that was raped, and you're not going to look, okay, which group of people are these that are committing this crime, right? So as the women's rights movement, to say men are not adjusting is to say, okay, if this is a violence that is happening against women, and it is fine, we are addressing it, then what is our men engaged strategy? And for men engaged strategy, it's not a strategy that is dealing with only adult men. It is dealing with boys at the root, to tell them that this is not okay, so that they grow up to be responsible men. And the Ministry of Gender actually has a whole men engaged strategy. So those are just some of the comments that I have. Then also on the media, right? On the media and why they're not taking gender sensitive reporting seriously. It almost feels like something that is brushed off, that okay, this thing has happened, let us brush it off. But then you have to ask yourself, so what is the media reporting about? And these are very difficult conversations. They're reporting on women protesting naked, they're reporting on corruption, they're reporting on interns striking. So this country, again, not to be political, there is a huge array of problems that are wrong with this country, right? Because if civil society say, why aren't they reporting on women's rights issues? Okay, so what are they reporting on? And I am a big believer that human rights are interconnected. Those women that are striking, it is related to women's rights. Corruption, there is an element there of women's rights. So the issue with this country, I keep going back to bad governance. Something is completely wrong with the editors. There is just something that is off, that we need to address. This women's rights, it is not an NGO issue. It is not, civil society can come out and say we are training these NGOs to do this, but the government can wake up just one day like this and say that in a national newspaper, 4 pages should be dedicated to what? Coverage of women's stories, right? And I don't mean those women's magazines. You see them, the magazines that are in the newspaper talking about plants, where plants where plants are supposed to be located in your house, right?
Yeah.
Which lights are perfect for the kitchen area, right? Serious. Are you seeing how state intervention is different from CSO intervention? You have power over people, but not to the tune that the people that they voted in power have power over them. Coming to the question of the judiciary, they are huge. First of all, we have to commend the judiciary, right? That is something that I deeply believe in. We have to commend the judiciary for the great work that they do. And if there are gaps there, could it be that there are capacity building gaps, right? Whatever is wrong with the judiciary. I know our good professor, Dr. Msinje Kabumba, has gone on a very, very much justified session, or a very much justified unveiling of what he believes is wrong with the judiciary. And if you read his series, so that would be partly my answer to you. But even in the judiciary, we see some things that are wrong. Issues of backlog, right? Yeah. Issues of backlog. So how do you solve backlog? Those are all technical issues. And again, they go back to issues of backlog. There are issues of interference. The 3 arms of government are supposed to be extremely independent arms of government, right? You have the judiciary, you have the executive, you have the legislature, right? I'm just picking a few issues here and there that I believe can be addressed. So if you see these 3 arms of government start to morph and merge into each other, or you see, you just see some sort of, even if it is rubbing off, the law is very clear. When something is written in the law, it is almost as though it was stone cast. So if it says that the 3 arms of government are not supposed to interfere with one another, There is a reason why the framers of the law framed it like that, because they know even if it is a rub like this, it is going to have the utmost negative influence on the independence of the judiciary or something like that. So for me, again, I go back to my initial stance. For today's show, if you're going to remember anything that I have said, I would like you to remember me as the person that said that violence against women is not an NGO issue. It is a government issue, right? Because women are part of this population, women are citizens in this country, so whatever challenges that are being faced by them have to be fronted as national issues. We can't feed a population of a country into an NGO, you get? Into an NGO that, okay, they're looking at health goes here, this goes here, you see? To the point that it is even the perception of society now. I work at FIDA Uganda, but when you say FIDA Uganda, the first thing people think about is, oh my God, they fight for women's rights. So even that thing, it bothers me so much, because why would you say we fight for women's rights? Who are we fighting, right? So it has almost been centered. That's why I say gender norms are so much part of society. It has been centered in a way that for any woman to come out and speak about human rights, you're already in a battle with someone that you don't know. And for me, those headlines that you see, they're horrible, but they're a true reflection of the same. Even the way that we speak, you lost your virginity. Was it something to lose? Aren't you a human being that has sexual autonomy over yourself? But a girl and a boy are engaging in this act, and the boy is having sex, but the girl is losing her virginity. You see how power relations come even in the most basic of ways, things that we do. Quotes, boys will be boys. Already you've set up the highest level of unaccountability. And the worst part is you're setting up that unaccountability among children. So again, going back to the men engaged strategy, there are so many things, but I think it is time we go back again to the interconnectedness of human rights. It is time to not to view women's rights as something that is NGO related. This is a serious national issue. It is the same way if you woke up in the morning and there was all this violence against men. People would say, what is happening? Because it is something that is almost unheard of for this gender to experience violence, right? So again, with the media, I asked myself, we are organizing a gender sensitive training at my workplace for a cohort of journalists, right? And we asked them, okay, what is the problem? Why aren't your stories making it fair? No, the editors won't let our stories pass because maybe they are focusing on sensational pieces of news, things like that. And the question I asked myself, okay, what are these sensational pieces of news? Then you realize that it is a what? It is a whole, you know, when there is a word, okay, you know, when you're making a mat? Who has ever made a mat here? You people are .com children. I've ever witnessed the making of a mat, and I've ever tried to make a mat. When you're making a mat, there are different pieces of fiber. Some go this side, some are at the front. But to make the mat, you have to fold this one, it passes through the other one. So it is like that. So that is what is happening in this country. There is the matter of women's rights, there is the matter of corruption, so we are sort of making this mat, but not realizing that there is a serious governance issue. And this show is for women's rights. I'll restrict it to women's rights, to say that the state needs to take this issue very seriously. Right now we have 3 members of the Domestic Violence Coalition, right? Myself from FIDA Uganda, Joan, and Susan. We are all wearing black. We are mourning. But is it the place of NGOs? And it is our place to mourn for a fellow woman. Why wasn't a national mourn or a national mourning declared by the state or the Ministry of Gender to say that we are going to mourn? I saw UN Women today morning, we posted this just a few days ago, right? To say that we are mourning in solidarity with a woman that has lost her life. People from the United Nations Women wore black today. And for me that was the biggest irony, right? That a development partner knows the importance of wearing black in solidarity with someone that has lost their life. How much more effect would it have if the president said tomorrow we are going to wear black? People from MTN would wear black. You get, if he says we are wearing black tomorrow to support Rebecca.
So why doesn't he say? Why doesn't he? Why do you believe he does not care, or the system does not care? Obviously, Joan has mentioned very fundamental points that even the members of parliament we have require mindset shift. It seems like a very overwhelming workload or task to place upon the group that seems to be advancing women's rights, which is the CSO realm, right? How do you see yourself reaching there? When from the highest point in this nation, there's been a certain disregard for women's lives, women's existence in this nation.
We have to seek for accountability from the government.
How do we seek for accountability at this point?
You have to make your voice heard. Civic engagement, right? You have to engage with the government. People, I recently saw these young ladies that, very brave young ladies that went naked and protested. And I know I'm taking the conversation into a political route, but everything is political, right? So these young ladies go and they are naked, they are protesting. And to my dismay or to my disappointment, the story and the rhetoric around their protesting was that these girls are showing their breasts, they are showing their private parts. So you miss the point, eh? You're so near the tree, but you miss the fruit. Why are these girls protesting, right? What age group are these girls in? What were these girls trying to say about corruption? We are very blessed that people in this panel all have jobs. And it is very easy to look at that story and say, okay, there is corruption and there is protesting happening. But this is a way of holding the government accountable. Because if you look at these girls are people that have gone to school, they have gone through a university education, but they have no jobs, right? And they're sitting home. Do you know the bitterness of sitting home and having no job? Worse, having no prospect of a job in the future. So, for me out there, I'm not encouraging, as people would say, or politicizing matters, but it is time to sort of shift the lens a bit. If you're Ugandan out there, hold accountability from the government. Because when they were coming into power, or when they were coming to request for the vote from you, they made promises unto you, right? They said that this is our plan, this is how we plan to help the country. Even for civil society, it is good to advocate for the rights of women. But how are we, and we are doing it, but how are we actively targeting the person that has the most influence over people? Or how are we targeting institutions? Now, parliament, how are we targeting institutions like parliament? If it is the judiciary, do we have a mechanism as civil society, or as just the community, where the judiciary gives feedback to society on gender responsive matters, on things like that? If it is parliament, how many laws have been passed that are gender responsive? And it doesn't stop there. How is this information accessible to the everyday Uganda? So my issue is holding the people that you gave power, or the people that promised to do good, accountable.
Okay, thank you so much, Rebecca. Joan, as we get to the close of the show, my question is, we have all these things we must do. We must hold the government accountable. We must now look at reframing community mindsets. It's immense work that must be done. The resources to do so. In the recent years, we've seen funding for CSOs being cut down. When we have the budget, the national budget being read, security or something of the like is given the largest portion of funding. Do we have what is the resource pool looking like to advance all these things? I know one of the demands that was made by the domestic violence coalition last week was that the government must Jelo sector must advance the funding that is put into these initiatives. But is it doing so? What is the resource pool looking like, and with that resource pool, can we advance this cause?
Speaking about resources, I think the people I'm seated with here can bear me witness that most of the resources that civil society is using, these are resources not from government. These are resources from elsewhere, where people have to sit down, write proposals, defend them, and all that. But then, I would commend government to prioritize women's rights and all rights all together, children's rights, men's rights, human rights in general. So last week I was on a radio talk show and we were talking about resources, and we were saying, why isn't Ministry of Gender being given resources to work hand in hand with civil society? I believe that is something that can work. See, all these NGOs and CBOs that we have in this country are registered. What is the essence of government having us documented? I thought the whole point would have been, how can we work together on the issues that are affecting society? Because whatever we do, we are helping the society and we are helping the people, and the people are a responsibility of government. So government should have come in place and they're like, okay, there should be a fund. I do not know. In the budget allocations, yes, of course, we do sit and we're like, please government, we need this money for this and that. But then is it a priority for the country? So the government needs to prioritize all these rights all together and the issues that the people are facing in community, and give funds through a particular ministry where they can resource and, you know, sit on a round table and they're like, okay, FIDA is doing this and that, UWONET is doing this and that, WEGCDA is doing this and that in the community. How can we give them resources basing on what they do? What are they best in? Are they into the laws? Are they into the rights? Are they into capacity building? Then how can we allocate and distribute these resources all together so that they're all getting a certain sum of money and then be able to help the community? But those are not our priorities. We have priorities for this country. And I think we need to voice out. The media also has to come out. The civil society has to continue. The movement has to continue speaking out. And maybe probably the government would also sit down and prioritize. But like I said, the mindset needs to start with the members of parliament. Because the members of parliament who actually are the final people on the allocations, on the budget, you know, sitting and all that, the committees are all in parliament. But because these are not their issues to address, they have other issues that they are prioritizing and they are looking forward to the next election. And that is what matters to them. And leaving out these issues, not remembering that these issues, these same issues, they're also part of the problem. They're facing the same challenges, but they cannot also come out to speak. So I do not know, but there should have been the problem. We shall start with mindset change of the people who are supposed to help us be able to allocate these funds. And those are the members of parliament, the committees in parliament, the ministries at hand that we could work together, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Gender. So if these things were an issue to them, the Education and Sports Ministry, if these issues were a priority to them, then we would be able. She talked about the academy being in Kenya. Why wouldn't we have an academy in Uganda? I don't think we are that poor not to afford such an academy, but it is not our priority. And that is why our people are in another country and there is no system to monitor and make sure that they are safe, and all we hear is sad news that we lost someone. And we cannot even account for it because the person who killed our citizen is a citizen of another country, and it is not our responsibility to hold them accountable. We only got to know about the person responsible when he died. What if he had not died? What was going to happen? He was still being protected where he was in hospital. We got to know about him after his demise. So then, how are we going to be able to help our people if we do not prioritize the issues that affect the people?
Okay. Thank you so much, Joan. We have come to the close of our show, so I will kindly request that you give them very brief closing remarks from Susan to Joan, and then finally Omega. Susan, go ahead, please.
Like Joan has very rightly said, the reason that violence against women continues to be endemic is because it's not a priority. It's not a priority for the state. It's not a priority for the community. For us as a people, it's not a priority. If you look at our threshold for bad manners, I'm just going to call it what it is, bad manners. Our threshold to tolerate it is so high. As a people, we tolerate violence so much. We look on and then we even perpetrate it. Many of us don't even know we are perpetrators. When certain things happen, we are happy, very happy to quickly share them. And we do not know that in sharing certain content that we are only entrenching, entrenching the oppression of women. So in as much as we want to hold our government accountable, and me, I've been very sure for the last many years that our government is not interested in women's rights. If they were, there are many other things that we would see happening. So my call is really for us as a people. It is upon us to be intolerant of that kind of behavior that oppresses women. If you are the one beating, abusing, denying, grabbing land, where do you expect the state to come in? After you've killed somebody? It is upon us as a people to say no. This behavior is criminal, it's unacceptable socially, and we are not going to allow it to happen. Not in this home, not in this neighborhood, not in this sub-county. And you will run perpetrators out of town. But we are so happy. We are so happy to let it continue. So when the viewers see us dressed in black, for me it is a call to people to know that when women speak out against the oppression that other women are facing, that we are calling upon you to join the fight. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Susan. Go ahead. Please go ahead.
My remarks would be on 3 things. 1, mindset change, awareness. 2, strong enforcement. Because we have the laws in place, but then where is the enforcement? Government should work hand in hand with civil society and the community at large. Because just like Ugandans are so scared of rioting and demonstrating on streets because, the actions there are harsh. Tear gas, and then the army is marching on the streets. If the same was done to the perpetrators, trust me, we would bring an end to violence. If you raped a girl and then you are handled accordingly, then the other person would be scared. But it is going on and on and on because at the end of the day, we only know the numbers of the victims. Even the police report is only telling us about the victims.
The reported cases.
Yeah, the girls who died, but they're not telling us where are the people who actually caused the death, the rapings and all that. So strong enforcement and then budget allocations. Government needs to allocate funds. I would briefly give an example of we have so many thousands of girls who are going abroad to work and the violence follows them. They are raped in those houses where they're working, they are killed, but we do not even have the statistics of the people dying. We do not have the statistics of those who are being raped. We have cases of, organs being taken out, but then who goes ahead? Where? And when we are like Ministry of Gender, you collect money, to give licenses to these companies, there is a collection of money. And they're also saying it goes to URA, to some fund that is, independent. And they're not also getting funds in return to be able to track progress of the people they're sending out. So budget allocations to end violence should be something that should be looked into by government and the ministries concerned. And the awareness.
Thank you so much, Joan. Omega, you.
how I wish
closing
this,
remarks.
this particular show would not end, but my parting remarks are going to be a bit lengthy. Not so lengthy to worry you, but just a few. Each billion that the Royal Danish Embassy, UN Women, whatever donor is out there, each billion of shillings that they give us is a missed opportunity for government to have performed its role. So this money, if for the government it is money, it should be counting in negatives. That okay, here we could have done this. You have foreign actors actually coming in to try and help, which is okay. Charity is beautiful, but charity must begin where? At home and with your people. But then something that she mentioned that is extremely also important for me is, why were the athletes going to Kenya, right? And it goes back to what is a state of equal opportunities in this country. Rebecca was from the Karamojong region. If you look at that region carefully, all these statistics that we mentioned, even in violence against women, there are statistics you must closely look at and observe patterns. In the Karamojong region, what does violence against women look like there? What is the state of equal opportunities in that region? How many children go to school in that region? What is the state of access to health? You get. We have programs we've partnered with in partnership with United Nations Women, the Swedish government. In Karamoja, the state of things in Karamoja is far from perfect. It is on the, if we are going off a cliff, we are just now being held by, that is what is happening in Karamoja. And yet this is a place, right, that is part of Uganda. And again, to politicize things on an already politicized thing, the state of equal opportunities in this country has a lot to do with violence against women, right? You watch people in big hammers, or you watch people take the national cake to say that, okay, which ethnic group is having more people in government, CEO positions. You saw the Daily Monitor article that was talking about how job opportunities within government institutions, or so-called big jobs, are dominated by a certain group of people, right? What does that mean? And I'm a firm believer, once again, I'll say that the interwovenness of it all. What does Rebecca's death have to do with the state of equal opportunities? And what does the state of equal opportunities have to do with violence against women and athletes and Karamoja and Gulu and Moyo? What is the difference between these districts and other districts? I can give you a statistics. The Equal Opportunities Commission of last year, 2022-2023, stated that Karamoja has not benefited from any infrastructure loan. Get the infrastructure loans, right? And if you read that particular report, it is my favorite report to date. If you read that report, you'll see exactly how education opportunities are portioned in the country, how scholarship opportunities are portioned in the country. To whose benefit are they? To whose detriment are they? And then you want to sort of phrase it that we are all equal. These people in Karamoja, they cannot feed their children with milk and eggs. And then you start hearing very disturbing conversations like, we shall not wait for the Karamojongs to develop. I used to hear that thing as a child, and I would say something is wrong with this statement, but I didn't know what was wrong with that statement, because you cannot say we cannot wait for the Karamojongs to develop. If they are part of you as a country, right, and you're moving with them, then they should also be given equal consideration. The person or the people or the infrastructure or the responsible persons that are handing out the development oil in terms of infrastructure, education, health, is it regional? So for me, that coverage has to be 360 degrees. Every Ugandan is a Ugandan. Still, the same issue goes for young ladies that are going to the Middle East and experiencing violence there. So for instance, they're making you breastfeed dogs, the sodomizing. You've seen maids that go to Qatar, the stories that come from there. The issue, yes, you can focus on the violence against the women, which is a good thing. But then you must also ask yourself, what were they leaving home for to go to a situation that was worse for them? So for me, that is it. This, again, I'll close by saying, women's rights are political issue. They're something that the government has to take equal consideration of. The same way that you would say, we are looking at health in this country, we're looking at education in this country. You know that there is a group of people in the country that has been disadvantaged by history, right? By the patriarchy. You know that these people are sort of set back because of certain factors. Put these people on the national agenda, right? Let them be something that is being considered. In fact, every case of violence against women, each life that we lose, we are here debating on how to create awareness change. But if for each female life that was lost, or a child life that was lost, it would be declared a day of national mourning and people would be wearing black. Do you know that is enough awareness building? Right? If you went to office in the morning and you're a man and you're a woman and everyone there is wearing black by directive of the authorities in power, and it is a must, already your mind is changed to say that this thing is wrong. Then you start doing inquisition into yourself. Why is it wrong? Yeah? Why is it that we are wearing black so many times? Right? So those are my parting remarks, not to take up more time.
Thank you so much, Omega. Thank you so much, our dear panelists. Prioritization and accountability. The conversation has just come down to prioritization and accountability. When we speak of 10,000 women being victims, out of 15,000, over 70% of these individuals being survivors of domestic violence in 1 year alone. These are not statistics alone. These are people. These are wives. These are mothers. These are human beings. And we must respect and uphold them accordingly. We question why we must even have conversations like this, why we must justify why women's rights are a priority, why we must engage time after time after time individuals on why women should be considered, why women's matters should be tabled. Such conversations should not be existing in 2024, and yet they are. In the age of Rebecca Cheptegei and the horrendous incident that befell her, we wonder, are women's rights even being considered rights anymore? When did we stop caring, or did we even care anymore? To the communities, to the stakeholders, the justice, law and order sector, the entire government, the media, to everyone involved, this is not a matter that must be tabled. This is a matter that is a human right. Women's rights are human rights. So we call upon you to do your role. The bare minimum is to do your role, and lives will be saved and lives will be prioritized. We extend our deepest condolences to the family of Rebecca Cheptegei and all the survivors of, I can't say survivors, and all the victims of domestic violence and femicide. We extend our deepest condolences. From us at Women Speaking, we are we're deeply sorry. We commiserate with you. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. My name is Turiho Danita. Have a brilliant day.